Hey everybody, this is AP Macro. We're doing a review of major graphs. We're talking about the business cycle. Guys, here's the big thing about the business cycle. It is the graph macroeconomics is founded upon. That's right. It's the graph for which macroeconomics even exists. What's macroeconomics? It's a study of the economy as a whole. That's macroeconomics. And the reason we try to study our economy as a whole is because of what this graph is showing us, because of how economic growth tends to happen across time. Here's the idea, guys. I'm putting real GDP on the vertical, representing our economy, the total value of goods and services we produce. I've got time. So how does our economy grow over time? Well, we wish it grew in a nice linear fashion across time, just keep going up. But that's not how we grow. How we actually grow is in this cyclical pattern, right, of ups and downs and ups and downs. Now, let me just first label these different elements of this curve, okay? So the top part of a cycle, that is known as the peak. The bottom part of the cycle is known as a trough. No big deal there. Now, this portion, when we're heading down, that is known by two names, either recession or it is known as a contraction. Both of those words work, okay? Our economy is contracting or we're in a recession. Now, this one, when the economy starts doing better, that is known as either a recovery, okay? So that can be labeled as a recovery or as an expansion. Now again, this graph is why macroeconomics exists. We don't like growing like that. We don't like the boom, bust way our economy grows. We would much rather grow on that long-term growth trend, right? Which is up, thankfully, for developed economies. It is up. And on average, we get that trending line. We would much rather grow on that red line than on this black line that has the booms and the busts. Now, just to make sure we're clear on this, some people might say, well, this sounds fun. Well, the roaring 20s, guys, that sounds fun too. But remember, it was followed by the Great Depression. The Great Depression is not worth the roaring 20s. Here's the big thing, guys. These down times are not worth these up times. So, here's the idea. Why do we grow like this? Well, there's a lot of different thoughts about it, okay? One way that people talk about it is ideas of debt cycles. And this makes a lot of sense. So take a look at this. So what they'll say is when you get in these uptrends right here, up here, the way you're able to grow faster than your average growth rate is because debt is building up, right? You're booming, things are going great, business confidence is up, consumer confidence is up. So what are businesses doing? They're borrowing like crazy, trying to invest. They say, I got tons of demand for my product. And so you got all these businesses starting to invest in themselves. You got new businesses, tons of new businesses perhaps starting, and consumers are spending. They're like, hey, I feel safe in my job. The economy's great. It looks like the economy's going to be great for, I don't know, as far as I can see out. I'm willing to borrow, add that new debt to the back of the house, or buy that more expensive car. And so you get these debt cycles. So these booms lead to these bust times, okay? So that's what a lot of people talk about. And that is why many people say what we need to do is we need to moderate both the booms and the busts. We need to moderate both the booms and the busts. Now, here's where it gets a little bit more political, okay? The idea is, or here's the thing. Economists see the world, there's different economists on different sides of the political aisle, right? Some are much more laissez-faire, leave it alone. Others are much more interventionist. Now, the way I'm going to speak for the next little bit is the consensus view. And I have to say, the consensus view in macroeconomics does lean more to the interventionist side, more to what we call Keynesian economics. And Keynesian economics is much about intervening, that we're going to need public sector actors like the government and the Fed to help moderate this business cycle. Now again, this is the consensus view. Doesn't mean that all economists hold this view, but here's how AP macroeconomics or a 101 macroeconomics generally approaches what to do about this curve. So, what should we do when we're expanding above that average growth rate? When we're expanding above that average growth rate, we need to act counter-cyclically. Our private sector actors, households, businesses, the rest of the world, they're not going to act counter-cyclically, they act pro-cyclically. They make this stuff even get more exaggerated. But we can't have public sector actors like the government and the Fed to act counter-cyclically. So what do I mean? we're expanding, what can the Fed do? The Fed can pull money out of the economy, right? They can do tight monetary policy, driving interest rates up, getting less borrowing, right? Less debt, less spending, and they could try to act counter-cyclically to bring us back closer to that red line. Or, what could the fiscal policy do? And by the way, we don't generally use fiscal policy much for booming, but what could they do? They could raise taxes, lower government purchases, or lower transfer payments. Because those are so politically difficult to do, we generally don't use fiscal policy to cool the economy down. Now, when we're contracting, when we're heading into a recession, again, public sector actors, that's what Keynesian economics would say. We can intervene. We have these public sector actors that can help to stabilize the economy. What can the Fed do when we're heading down? They can actually be easy with the money supply. They can push reserves into the banking system, push loanable funds into the banking system, causing the interest rates to go down, getting more lending, more borrowing, more spending, because that's what we need in a recession, trying to act, again, counter-cyclically to stabilize the economy, trying to get us to go like that, closer back to that red line. Fiscal policy, yes, that often does get used on the recessionary side, right? We can lower taxes, increase government purchases, increase transfer payments. Hey guys, it's just the way, it's just a fact of life that our populace is a little bit better with lower taxes, more government purchases, more transfer payments. So we tend to use that fiscal policy more on the bust side. So we can use monetary policy and or fiscal policy to help stabilize the economy, to bring us back onto that red line. Now, before I end though, because I'm talking about this consensus view of economists that leans on the Keynesian side more towards interventionist to create more stability in our business cycle, let's talk about some detractors of that view, okay? What would they say? They would say, or one thought out there, one major thought out there is, hey, these booms right here, it's not just because households and businesses got carried away, it's because your central banks got carried away. What central banks did is during these boom times, they supported this. They allowed the money supply or even increased the money supply, driving interest rates even lower, causing what we call malinvestment, too much investment, okay? Central banks were allowing this to happen. It was bad management of the economy by the central bank, and that's why this is happening. It was the government intervention that's actually causing this boom-bust cycle. And if our Fed, or central banks, which is the Fed in the United States, stopped doing this type of thing and tried to follow a monetary rule that only allowed the money supply to increase by a little bit every single year, or some people would even advocate if we tied our money supply to gold or to gold and silver, to something, if we didn't have fiat money you could just print, then we wouldn't have these boom cycles, and therefore we wouldn't have the bust. In fact, people in this latter group, okay, what they would say is, again, it's the public sector actors that are causing this, and what they really, the big problem are these booms, that they're fueling these booms. These public sector actors fuel these booms, and that's why we're getting the bust. If we just didn't have them doing that, we wouldn't grow the way that this looks like. But again, not the consensus view, okay? Consensus view for an AP macro class or a 101 class is, hey, we can use our public sector actors in a positive way to stabilize that growth trend. And again, what I mean by stabilizing is acting counter-cyclically. When we are expanding, we can try to contract. When we're contracting, we can try to expand. We can use monetary and fiscal policy to do that. And guys, macroeconomics is very much, at its heart, trying to deal with that business cycle. Hope that made sense to you. We'll see you in another video.